What most people misunderstand about 5 chilling behaviors that reveal hidden evil is that evil rarely looks dangerous in the beginning. It doesn't walk into your life wearing darkness on its face. It doesn't announce itself with rage, violence, or cruelty. Real evil is patient. It studies people. It adapts. And most importantly, it hides behind normal behavior. That's why so many people ignore the warning signs until it's too late. The most dangerous individuals are often the ones who appear calm, intelligent, charming, or emotionally controlled. They know how to blend in. They know how to say the right things. They understand human emotions better than most people do, not because they care, but because manipulation requires observation. This is what Chase Hughes often points toward in behavioral psychology. The human brain is trained to trust familiarity. If someone smiles, speaks calmly, and mirrors our emotions, we instinctively lower our guard. But hidden evil does not depend on intimidation. It depends on access. The closer someone gets to your trust, the more damage they can quietly create without resistance. And the frightening part is this: many people never recognize these behaviors because they are searching for obvious monsters. But hidden evil is subtle. It shows up in patterns, tiny moments, small emotional shifts, a strange coldness during your pain, a quiet enjoyment when others fail, a calculated way of making you doubt yourself while appearing innocent at the same time. These people do not always explode with anger. Sometimes they stay perfectly calm while destroying someone emotionally. Sometimes they create confusion so slowly that the victim begins blaming themselves instead of questioning the manipulator. And over time, the target loses confidence, clarity, and emotional stability without fully understanding why. Psychologically, this is what makes hidden evil so powerful. It works silently. It creates emotional erosion instead of direct attack. One conversation at a time, one lie at a time, one subtle betrayal at a time. And most victims ignore their intuition because the behaviors seem too small to matter individually. But when you step back, the pattern becomes terrifyingly clear. This video is not about paranoia. It's about awareness. Because once you learn these behaviors, you start seeing people differently. You begin noticing who feels energized by control, who lacks genuine empathy, and who carefully hides destructive intentions behind a socially acceptable mask. The truth is, evil is not always loud. Sometimes it's intelligent. Sometimes it's charming. Sometimes it's incredibly patient. And the people who understand human behavior the best are often the ones capable of using it in the darkest ways imaginable. One of the most chilling behaviors a person can show is the complete absence of genuine empathy during someone else's pain. Not fake sympathy, not performative concern. Real empathy. The ability to emotionally connect to another human being's suffering. Because when that ability is missing, something dangerous often replaces it: emotional detachment mixed with control. At first, this behavior is hard to notice because these people usually know how to imitate care. They understand what empathy is supposed to look like. They know the right facial expressions, the right tone of voice, the right words. But if you pay close attention, something always feels emotionally empty underneath it. When you're hurting, most healthy people naturally soften. Their body language changes. Their attention becomes fully present. Even if they don't know what to say, you can feel genuine emotional concern coming from them. But hidden evil responds differently. Sometimes they become strangely cold during moments that should emotionally affect them. Sometimes they look almost irritated by your vulnerability. And sometimes, even more disturbing, they appear calm in a way that feels unnatural, as if your pain means absolutely nothing to them internally. This is because empathy creates discomfort in healthy people. Seeing someone suffer activates emotional tension inside the brain, but individuals with darker intentions often experience something completely different. Instead of feeling connected to your pain, they emotionally distance themselves from it. In some cases, they even feel powerful because of it. That's why certain people become unusually calm while you are emotionally collapsing. While you're confused, crying, or trying to explain your feelings, they stay emotionally untouched, not grounded. Untouched. And over time, this creates psychological damage because humans are wired to seek emotional safety during pain. We instinctively look for understanding, reassurance, and emotional warmth. But when someone repeatedly responds to our suffering with indifference, mockery, silence, or emotional coldness, the mind begins questioning itself. You start thinking maybe you're too emotional. Maybe you're overreacting. Maybe your pain is inconvenient. And slowly, you stop trusting your own emotional reality. This is one of the darkest forms of manipulation because it doesn't always involve screaming or aggression. Sometimes the damage comes from emotional absence. From watching someone stare at your suffering with empty eyes while pretending to care just enough to avoid suspicion. And the frightening part is that these people often reveal themselves during your weakest moments. Anybody can appear kind when life is easy. Anybody can smile when there's nothing emotionally demanding happening. But pain exposes character faster than comfort ever will. Watch how people respond when you are vulnerable. Watch who becomes patient and who becomes cold. Watch who listens carefully and who quietly loses interest the moment the attention is no longer about them. Hidden evil often reveals itself through emotional inconsistency. They may show compassion publicly but indifference privately. They may comfort you in front of others, but dismiss your feelings when nobody is watching. That split behavior matters because it reveals intention. Genuine empathy stays consistent even when there is nothing to gain socially. And sometimes the darkest individuals don't simply ignore pain. They study it. They memorize your insecurities. They learn what wounds affect you most. Then later, during conflict, they use that information with surgical precision. That is not emotional weakness. That is calculated emotional predation. The truth is, empathy is not just kindness. It is restraint. It is the internal barrier that stops people from enjoying another person's suffering. And when that barrier is missing, human behavior can become terrifyingly cold. Because the people who feel nothing while you suffer are often the same people capable of hurting you without losing a single minute of sleep. Some of the most dangerous people are not driven by anger, revenge, or even hatred. They are driven by something far more disturbing: enjoyment. A quiet emotional satisfaction that comes from watching confusion grow inside another person. This behavior is difficult to recognize at first because it rarely looks dramatic. In fact, people who enjoy emotional chaos often appear calm on the surface. They may even seem intelligent, charming, or emotionally composed. But underneath that controlled appearance is someone who feels stimulated by disorder, tension, and psychological imbalance. You'll notice it in the way they communicate. Their words rarely bring clarity. Conversations with them feel mentally exhausting. One moment they are warm, the next they are distant. One day they praise you, the next they subtly undermine you. They constantly create mixed signals, and over time, you begin feeling emotionally unstable without understanding why. This is not always accidental. For some individuals, confusion is power. The less certain you feel, the easier you become to control. When people are emotionally grounded, they think clearly, they trust their instincts, they recognize manipulation faster. But confusion weakens psychological resistance. It creates self-doubt. And once self-doubt enters the mind, control becomes easier. That's why hidden evil often speaks in contradictions. They deny things they clearly said. They change emotional positions without explanation. They rewrite events. They make you question your memory, your perception, even your emotional reactions. And the frightening part is that they often watch your confusion with complete emotional calmness. Healthy people usually want resolution. They want communication to reduce tension, not increase it. Even during disagreements, emotionally healthy individuals naturally move toward understanding. But people who enjoy chaos behave differently. They prolong emotional uncertainty because uncertainty gives them emotional leverage. You'll notice that conflicts with them never fully end. There is always another hidden issue. Another subtle jab, another emotionally loaded comment designed to reopen tension. Peace feels temporary around them because emotional instability is part of the environment they create. Psychologically, this behavior often comes from a deep need for dominance. Chaos allows them to control emotional direction. If they can keep you anxious, confused, or emotionally reactive, they remain in the stronger psychological position. And over time, this begins affecting the victim's nervous system. People exposed to constant emotional confusion start becoming hyperaware. They overanalyze texts, facial expressions, tone changes, and silence. Their brain enters survival mode. They become emotionally exhausted because the mind is constantly searching for stability that never fully arrives. This is why emotional chaos can become addictive and destructive at the same time. The victim starts chasing clarity from the same person, creating the confusion. They begin hoping for emotional consistency from someone who secretly benefits from instability. And hidden evil understands this cycle very well. Sometimes these individuals intentionally create jealousy, misunderstandings, or emotional tension simply to observe reactions. They enjoy watching people emotionally unravel because it gives them a sense of psychological influence. The ability to affect someone's emotional state becomes entertaining to them. That is why you must pay attention to patterns, not isolated moments. Everyone can be confusing occasionally. Everyone can communicate poorly sometimes. But when confusion becomes a repeated emotional experience around the same person, something deeper is happening, especially when they never seem interested in solving it. One of the clearest signs of emotional danger is when someone repeatedly creates chaos and then acts innocent while watching you struggle to emotionally recover from it. They become the fire and the firefighter at the same time. And eventually, you realize something terrifying: your pain was never the problem they wanted to fix. It was the reaction they wanted to see, because some people do not feel alive through connection, they feel alive through control. One of the darkest behaviors hidden evil uses is charm. Not genuine warmth, not authentic charisma, but calculated charm, the kind designed to lower your defenses, gain your trust, and quietly take control of your perception. Most people think charm is automatically a good trait. They associate it with confidence, intelligence, social skill, or emotional awareness. But psychologically, charm is neutral. In the wrong hands, it becomes a weapon, because charm can hide intention. Some of the most manipulative people you will ever meet know exactly how to make others feel special. They know how to maintain eye contact at the perfect moment. They know how to mirror emotions, speak calmly, and create emotional intensity very quickly. Around them, conversations feel unusually engaging. You feel seen, understood, chosen. And that feeling is what makes them dangerous. Healthy connection develops gradually. Real trust builds over time through consistency, honesty, and emotional safety. But manipulative charm moves fast. It creates emotional closeness before true character is revealed. That's why these individuals often leave powerful first impressions. People describe them as magnetic, charming, impossible to ignore. But behind that charm is often a hidden goal: influence. They study reactions carefully. They learn what makes people feel valued, insecure, excited, or emotionally attached. Then they adapt their personality accordingly. Around one person they appear sensitive. Around another they appear confident. Around someone else they become mysterious or deeply understanding. But the personality is not always authentic. It's strategic. This is why so many people later say something disturbing after dealing with manipulative individuals. I feel like I never really knew them, because the version they showed you was designed specifically for access. One of the clearest signs of weaponized charm is inconsistency behind closed doors. Publicly, they appear warm and emotionally intelligent. Privately, they become dismissive, cold, or emotionally cruel once they feel secure in their control. And the shift feels shocking because the contrast is so extreme. At first, the victim tries to recover the original version of the person. They keep believing the charming side is the real side. But over time, they realize the charm only appeared when influence was needed. This creates psychological confusion because humans naturally trust emotional familiarity. Once someone makes us feel emotionally connected, the brain becomes slower to recognize danger. We defend them, excuse them, rationalize their behavior, and manipulative people understand this very well. That's why charm is often used before control, betrayal, or emotional damage. It prepares the emotional environment. It builds trust quickly so resistance becomes weaker later. You'll notice these individuals often know how to say exactly what people want to hear. Not because they deeply care, but because they carefully observe emotional needs. They sense loneliness, insecurity, desire for validation, or emotional vulnerability, then position themselves as the solution. But eventually, the mask begins slipping. Real character always reveals itself through consistency. A genuinely kind person does not become cruel the moment they stop benefiting from you. A genuinely empathetic person does not suddenly lose compassion when nobody is watching. Weaponized charm fades once control is established, and that's the chilling part. The kindness was never connection. The attention was never intimacy. The emotional closeness was never fully real. It was persuasion disguised as affection. This is why hidden evil can be so difficult to detect in the beginning. People expect danger to feel uncomfortable immediately, but manipulative charm often feels intoxicating at first, safe, exciting, powerful. Until one day you realize the person who made you feel deeply understood was actually studying you the entire time. And some people do not use charm to connect with human beings. They use it to gain access to them. One of the most disturbing forms of hidden evil is not physical aggression. It's the slow destruction of another person's confidence. Quietly, patiently, almost invisibly, because some people do not attack you directly. They weaken you gradually until you no longer recognize yourself. At first, the behavior seems small, a subtle comment disguised as a joke, a dismissive reaction when you're excited about something, a strange silence after your success. Tiny moments that feel uncomfortable but easy to ignore individually. And that is exactly why this tactic is so dangerous. The destruction happens slowly enough that the victim rarely notices it in real time. These individuals understand something powerful about human psychology. Confidence shapes perception. When a person trusts themselves, manipulation becomes harder. Confident people question unhealthy behavior. They protect boundaries. They walk away from emotional harm faster. But a person filled with self-doubt becomes easier to control. So hidden evil often works by weakening identity first. You'll notice they rarely attack in obvious ways. Instead, they use subtle emotional erosion. They interrupt your confidence repeatedly until insecurity becomes internalized. Over time, you stop speaking with certainty. You stop trusting your instincts. You begin second-guessing simple decisions. And the frightening part is that they often do this while pretending to care about you. Sometimes they disguise criticism as honesty. They say they are just trying to help. They frame emotional attacks as concern. But the effect is always the same. You slowly feel smaller around them. Healthy people encourage growth. Even during disagreement, they do not feel threatened by your confidence, intelligence, or emotional strength. But people with darker intentions often feel uncomfortable when others become empowered. Why? Because strong people are harder to dominate. That's why these individuals subtly compete with the people closest to them. They struggle to celebrate others sincerely. When you succeed, their energy changes. When you feel confident, they become colder. When you begin healing emotionally, they suddenly create new tension. It's as if your strength threatens their emotional position. Psychologically, this behavior often comes from deep insecurity mixed with a need for control. Instead of improving themselves internally, they reduce the confidence of others externally. It gives them temporary psychological superiority. And over time, the victim adapts to the environment emotionally. They stop expressing opinions openly because they expect criticism. They stop sharing dreams because excitement gets dismissed. They begin shrinking themselves to avoid emotional punishment. This is how emotional conditioning works. The person slowly learns that confidence creates tension while self-doubt creates temporary peace. And without realizing it, they start participating in their own emotional suppression. That is why this behavior becomes so psychologically destructive. It changes identity from the inside out. You'll often hear victims say things like, "I used to feel different before I met them." That sentence matters because emotional predators rarely destroy people immediately. They slowly disconnect people from their natural confidence until insecurity becomes their normal emotional state. And the manipulator benefits from that transformation. A weakened person asks for more permission, seeks more approval, questions themselves more often. Their emotional dependence increases while their self-trust decreases. This is not accidental. And one of the darkest signs is that these individuals often seem emotionally satisfied once your confidence finally collapses. The criticism softens, the tension decreases. Why? Because control has already been established. The threat is gone. But here's the truth: most people realize too late. Anyone who constantly makes you feel smaller is not helping you grow. They are helping themselves feel powerful. Because people with hidden evil do not always destroy lives through violence. Sometimes they destroy people by convincing them they were never strong to begin with. One of the clearest signs of hidden evil is the complete absence of real guilt after causing pain. Not fake apologies, not carefully rehearsed regret. Real guilt, the kind that emotionally disturbs a person after they hurt someone. Because healthy people carry emotional weight when they damage another human being. Even if the mistake was accidental, there is usually discomfort afterward. Their conscience becomes active. They reflect. They feel tension inside themselves because empathy naturally creates accountability. But some people experience something very different. They can lie, betray, manipulate, humiliate, or emotionally destroy others and still sleep peacefully at night. Not because they healed the situation, but because they never truly felt responsible for the damage in the first place. And that is deeply chilling. At first, this behavior is difficult to recognize because manipulative individuals often know how to perform remorse. They understand social expectations. They know when they are supposed to apologize. They know what guilt is supposed to sound like. But if you watch closely, something feels empty underneath it. Their apologies lack emotional depth. Their regret disappears quickly. The focus shifts back to themselves almost immediately. Sometimes they even become annoyed that you are still affected by what they did. This is one of the biggest psychological differences between genuine remorse and calculated remorse. Genuine guilt creates reflection. Fake guilt creates strategy. People with real empathy usually try to repair damage because seeing someone hurt bothers them internally. But hidden evil often apologizes only to regain control, restore image, or escape consequences. Once the situation stabilizes, the harmful behavior quietly returns. That pattern matters, because repeated harm without meaningful change reveals character more than words ever will. You'll notice these individuals often justify their actions instead of confronting them honestly. They blame stress, childhood, misunderstandings, your sensitivity, or other people's reactions, anything except their own choices. Why? Because real accountability threatens the image they have built around themselves. Some people are so emotionally disconnected from guilt that they begin viewing other humans as tools instead of emotional beings. Relationships become transactional. Emotions become weaknesses to exploit. Trust becomes an opportunity instead of a responsibility. And this is where human behavior becomes frighteningly cold. Psychologically, guilt acts as an internal boundary. It limits cruelty. It creates emotional resistance against harming others. But when that internal system is weak or missing, manipulation becomes easier because there is little emotional consequence happening inside the person. That's why certain individuals can hurt someone repeatedly while appearing emotionally unaffected. The victim keeps waiting for conscience to appear. They expect realization, empathy, or emotional awakening. But sometimes it never comes, and this truth becomes devastating for people who naturally project empathy onto others. They assume everyone eventually feels bad for causing pain because that is how their own mind works. They cannot imagine intentionally damaging someone without emotional struggle afterward. But hidden evil does not operate from the same emotional structure. Sometimes these individuals even rewrite the story completely. They portray themselves as the victim after causing harm. They distort reality so convincingly that others begin questioning the actual victim instead. And because they feel little genuine guilt, they can maintain the performance with disturbing confidence. That emotional calmness confuses people. How can someone hurt others so deeply and feel nothing? Because not everyone experiences conscience with the same intensity. And one of the most dangerous mistakes people make is believing emotional intelligence automatically means emotional goodness. Some individuals understand emotions very well. They simply use that understanding for manipulation instead of connection. The frightening part is this: a person without genuine guilt becomes capable of almost anything if there are no consequences strong enough to stop them. Because when empathy disappears and conscience stays silent, human behavior can become terrifyingly empty. And the people who never feel guilt after hurting others are often the same people who will do it again without hesitation.